Hello everybody, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Our lecture today about electrocardiography. Objectives of this lecture: we must describe the waves of the electrocardiogram, describe the way the electrocardiogram is recorded, and relate the heart electrical activities to an electrocardiogram tracing. لازم نعرف شلون نحصل الالكتروكارديوجرام ونسجله. لازم نوصف الويفز اللي بالالكتروكارديوجرام، ولازم نعرف كل ويف تدل على أي electrical activity inside the heart. Electrocardiography, the science which deal with recording, تسجيل, analysis, تحليل, and interpretation of electrical activity of the heart. The body fluid are good conductor of electricity. Therefore, the electrical activity occurring in the heart during each beat can be picked up by the surface electrodes. البادي فلويد موصلات جيدة، راح تعمل ككوندكترز، راح توصلنا فوليوم كوندكترز، توصلنا الالكتريسيتي اللي تولدت بالهارت تنتقل الى السكن، واحنا حاطين electrodes على السكن. فthis electrical activity will be picked up by the surface electrodes. نجي على normal electrocardiogram. The first wave in the normal electrocardiogram is positive and we call it P wave. P wave represent atrial depolarization. The second wave or group of waves called QRS. The QRS complex represent ventricular depolarization. Then the T wave. T wave represent ventricular repolarization. P atrial depolarization, QRS ventricular depolarization, T wave ventricular repolarization. The atrial repolarization. There is no wave for atrial repolarization because the wave is obscured by the large QRS. Now we will study the intervals and segments. First one is PR segment. When we say segment, it is from the end of wave to the beginning of next wave. So PR segment is from the end of P wave to the beginning of Q or R wave. Why Q or R? Because in some leads Q will not occur. مو دائما الكيو موجودة، فنعتبرها إلى بداية الكيو، وإذا الكيو مو موجودة إلى بداية الR wave. Second is the PR interval from the beginning of P wave to the beginning of Q or R wave. This is the PR interval. Third one is ST segment from the end of S wave to the beginning of T wave. And the fourth is QT interval from the beginning of Q to the end of T. So we have PR segment, PR interval, ST segment and QT interval. How we can name the waves of an ECG. اجانا ECG ونريد نسمي الwaves. Q wave is the first negative deflection after P wave. حددنا ال P أول negative deflection بعد ال P هو نسميه Q wave. R is the first positive deflection after P wave. First positive deflection after P wave. إذا بعد ال P هو positive نسميه R. S wave is the first negative deflection after R wave. The first negative deflection after R wave. Let's take examples. This is P. The first positive wave after P, we will call it R. The first positive wave after P, we call it R. Even there is no Q. هنا ما عندنا Q، ما عندنا negative بعد ال P، مو شرط تطلع ال Q. فاللي بعد ال P اجت positive سميناها R. بعد ال R negative wave, the first negative wave after R, we call it S wave. And this is T wave. Let's take another example. The first wave is P. After P, the first negative wave after P, we call it Q. Then positive wave, we call it R. And this is T wave. In this example, the first positive after P, we will call it R. Then the first negative after R, we will call it S. So we must know how to name each wave. This is synchronization, توقيت, between the electrical activity in the electrocardiogram, recorded in the electrocardiogram, and the action potential of ventricular muscle cells. احنا خذينا ال phases of ventricular muscle cells وقلنا phase 0 is rapid depolarization and it's corresponding with the QRS. Phase 0 and 1, which is the initial rapid repolarization, correspond to the R and S waves, while phase 2 اللي هو البلاتو correspond to ST segment, and phase 3 corresponding to T wave. Repolarization correspond to T wave, which is ventricular repolarization. Let's take some MCQs. The repolarization of the ventricles is represented by the QRS complex. False. QRS complex represent what? Represent, yes, ventricular depolarization. QT interval. The QT interval represent both ventricular depolarization and repolarization. So this answer is wrong. T wave, yes, right. So our choice C wave. Question. Atrial depolarization, P wave, one deflection. يعني الاتريال depolarization انطانا ال P wave only one wave only بينما ventricular depolarization give the QRS complex many deflection. Why there is many deflections in the ventricular depolarization? This is because of the different current occur in the ventricle. In the atria, one current. In the ventricle, there is multiple currents. Because of the presence of different currents during ventricular depolarization. Electrical conduction in the heart. This is the SA node. It will generate action potentials, electrical impulses. These electrical impulses spread into the atria in one direction and giving one wave called P wave. These impulses will reach the AV node and there will be delay for 0.1 second. Then electrical impulses reach the ventricle. In the ventricles there are multiple currents. First current is from the left to the right through the mid portion of the interventricular septum. This is the first current. This current gives us the Q wave. Then impulses or depolarization move toward the apex. This current gives the R wave. Then excitation spread, depolarization spread through the ventricular walls to the posterobasal parts of the heart. This will give the S wave. Then there will be T wave, which is ventricular repolarization. The depolarization also spread from endocardial to pericardial surface. Calibration of time and voltage on electrocardiogram paper. البيبر بيها مربعات، لازم نعرف كل مربع ايش قد يمثل لي من الوقت او الفولتية. كل مربع كبير يحتوي على 5 مربعات صغيرة على المحور الأفقي وعلى المحور العمودي. One large square is equal to 5 millimeter. 5 small squares. Each small square equal to 1 millimeter. The horizontal line represent time. الخط الأفقي يمثل الوقت وهو نسأل عنه بكلمة duration. بينما the vertical line represent voltage and we ask about it by the word amplitude. نريد نسأل على voltage نقول what is the amplitude. So duration for time المحور الأفقي والamplitude for voltage المحور العمودي. Let's take the time, the duration of waves. The speed of the instrument, the electrocardiograph. الجهاز اسمه electrocardiograph بينما الورقة اسمها electrocardiogram. الجهاز electrocardiograph سرعته تكون 25 ملم per second يعني 5 مربعات كبيرة per 1 second. سرعة الورقة في الجهاز، حركة الورقة في الجهاز 25 ملم per second يعني 5 مربعات كبيرة تساوي 25 ملم. المربع الكبير الواحد راح يمثل لي 1/5 من السكند. ليش؟ لأن 5 مربعات 1 سكند، نقسم على 5 يطلع لنا المربع الواحد 1/5 من السكند ويساوي 0.2 سكند. إذا كل مربع كبير يمثل في الوقت 0.2 سكند. المربع الصغير ايش قد يمثل؟ أقسم أيضا على 5 لأن المربع الكبير يساوي 5 مربعات صغيرة، فالمربع الصغير يساوي 1 small square is equal to 0.2 divided by 5. ال 0.2 أقسمها من جديد على 5 وتطلع لي الناتج كل مربع صغير يساوي 0.04 سكند. احنا اللي يهمنا والمهم نحفظه انه كل مربع صغير يمثل بالوقت بالتايم بالديوريشن يمثل لي 0.04 سكند. اذا هاي الطريقة صعبة بالاشتقاق ناخذها بطريقة اسهل. الطريقة السهلة تقول speed of the instrument is 25 mm per second. كل 25 ملم تساوي لنا 1 سكند. ال 1 ملم يساوي شقد x حاصل ضرب الوسطين في الطرفين يساوي x تساوي 1 multiplied by 1 divided by 25. 1 في 1 تقسيم 25 وتساوي 0.04 سكند. هاي اشتقاق أسهل بواسطة استخدام حاصل ضرب الوسطين في الطرفين. خلينا تايم. هسه ناخذ الفولتج. بالنسبة للفولتج 1 مليمتر 1 ملي فولت يساوي 10 small squares. 1 ملي فولت يساوي 10 small squares. So 1 small square equal to 0.1 millivolt. هذا راح يهمنا احنا انه 1 small square will equal to 0.1 millivolt. خذينا التايم خذينا الفولتج وقلنا ال 1 small square equal to 0.1 millivolt بينما ال 1 small square in the horizontal line represent time and it's equal to 0.04 second. So we must know these two values. Why we study these numbers؟ ليش ندوخ روحنا ونحفظ هاي الأرقام 0.04 second وال 0.1 millivolt. To calculate the amplitude of the waves and duration of intervals. حتى نحسب الامبليتيودز والduration of the waves and intervals حتى نعرفها نحسبها نعرف الطبيعي شقد ونعرف هذا التخطيط طبيعي أم لا. ناخذ مثال example. Calculate the duration of PR interval. The PR interval here is equal to 5 small squares. Where is the PR interval? From the beginning of P wave to the beginning of the Q wave or R wave. So it's 5 small squares. 5 multiplied by 0.04 second equal to 0.2 second. What is the normal PR interval duration? The normal duration of PR interval is 0.12 to 0.2 second. So this is normal. Another example. Calculate the duration of QT interval. Here represented by 6 small squares. from the beginning of Q to the end of T wave. 6 multiplied by 0.04 second equal to 0.24 second. Another example, calculate the amplitude of R wave. Here we calculate the R wave from the isoelectrical line من خط الصفر مو من بداية أو نهاية الكيو من الايزوelectrical line. نحسب عدد المربعات 7 small squares. R wave 7 small squares. 7 multiplied by 0.1 millivolt and the R wave amplitude equal to 0.7 millivolt. Another example, calculate the duration of QRS complex. 3 small squares. 3 multiplied by 0.04 equal to 0.12 second. Normal duration of QRS complex from 0.08 to 0.10 second. What the intervals represent in the heart? We will name the interval and name the events occur during this interval. PR interval to represent the atrioventricular conduction. PR interval, atrioventricular conduction. QRS duration, ventricular depolarization. QT interval, ventricular action potential, which include both depolarization represented by the QRS and repolarization represented by the T wave. MCQ. QRS complex in the electrocardiogram has a normal duration of 0.3 second. Wrong. We said before that the normal duration is from 0.08 to 0.10 second. Represent atrial repolarization. False. Is due to ventricular systole. Is due to ventricular depolarization. The right answer is D, not C. Why? It is the electrocardiogram record electrical activity, not mechanical activity. Ventricular systole mean contraction, mean mechanical activity. Mechanical activity, not electrical activity. The electrocardiogram recording the ventricular depolarization, which is electrical activity, not the systole, which is mechanical activity. Before using the electrocardiograph, the usual voltage calibration is that 1 millivolt signal produces 0.1 millimeter deflection. 100 millivolt signal produces 10 millimeter deflection. 10 millivolt signal produces 10 millimeter deflection. 1 millivolt signal produces 10 millimeter deflection. 1 millivolt signal produces 100 millimeter deflection. The right answer is D. 1 millivolt signal produces 10 millimeter deflection, 10 small squares. The PR interval of the electrocardiogram is the interval from the beginning of P wave to the beginning of T wave. Wrong. To the beginning of Q or R. Has a duration that varies from 0.25 to 0.3 seconds. Wrong. The right answer is from 0.12 to 0.2 seconds. Is affected by the conductivity of the AV node. The PR interval mainly affected by the conductivity of the AV node. As the delay of the AV node increases in certain diseases, the PR interval will be prolonged. راح يكون الدوريشن مال PR interval أطول من الطبيعي إذا كان هنالك خلل بالconductivity of the AV node، لأن الإمبلس راح تتأخر بالAV node وما راح توصل للفنتركل، فالPR interval راح تكون طويلة. D. All the above. The right answer is C. The PR interval affected by the conductivity of the AV node.